Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the LFS podcast with me, Caoimhan Ferris. This week on the show, are Liverpool's hopes of a top 4 finish actually reasonable after continuing their winning streak and Manchester United losing 2 in a row? And with it entering crunch time in the relegation battle, is it time to officially say goodbye to Southampton? Plus, all the biggest stories from this week's news in the footballing world. All of that and more to come in this week's LFS podcast. Hello and welcome once again to the LFS podcast. We're going to get straight into this week's news then. And Chelsea have announced their freezing general admission season tickets for the 2023-24 season. The Blues have decided not to increase season ticket prices for a 12th successive year, despite rising costs, with the club saying it is acutely aware of the cost of living crisis facing supporters. The West London club also recognised the ongoing commitment of their fans during a turbulent season, which has seen them fail to challenge for silverware and face a fight just to finish in the top half of the Premier League table, despite a huge outlay on players since last summer's takeover. Scotland's final fixture of 2023 has been confirmed, with Steve Clarke's side set to play France in an international friendly match on October the 17th in Lille. Scotland's record against France is delicately poised. The two nations have played on 16 occasions, with 8 wins apiece since they first met in 1930. Manchester United and Manchester City fans heading to next month's FA Cup final will have access to 120 coaches to aid their travel after the Football Association procured additional buses due to a rail strike. Each club has been allocated 60 vehicles by the FA to compensate for the lack of national rail services to transport supporters to London for the game on Saturday, June the 3rd, due to a planned industrial action on the railways. England's football governing body has also worked with Brent Council to set up a park and walk facility at Friend Country Park to provide additional parking services for fans who drive to Wembley. The head of external operations at the FA, Tom Legg, said, "We have worked closely with both clubs and travel operators to put in place alternative options for supporters coming to Wembley Stadium for the showpiece event of the season. We would urge anyone travelling to the game to plan their journey well in advance and to consider their options in place to support them. Spaces on the coaches at a cost of £60 per adult and £55 for under 16s are only available to supporters with a valid matchday ticket bought via their club." The Uruguayan Football Association and Marcelo Bielsa have reached a deal for the 67-year-old to take over as the national team's new head coach, according to local media. According to El.8 newspaper, legal advisors from both sides have been discussing contract details for quite some time. Bielsa's latest job was at Leeds, where he managed the club for three and a half years. His first game in charge of Uruguay is set to be a friendly match against Cuba at Estadio Centenario in Montevideo on June the 14th. Manchester City forward Erling Haaland has been named the Football Writers Association's Men's Footballer of the Year for 2022-23, while Chelsea striker Sam Kerr has won the Women's Footballer of the Year award. The Norway international received 82% of the FWA vote, ahead of Arsenal duo Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard. Haaland has contributed an incredible 51 goals in all competitions so far this season, as Man City look to secure a very historic treble. The Premier League and the Professional Footballers Association have signed off a new 5-year partnership agreement starting next season, which is understood to be worth around £125 million. The bodies agreed a 1-year deal last summer for the 2022-23 campaign, which was worth £24 million, an increase of £1.9 million on the annual value of the previous 3-year deal, which ran from 2019 to 2022. The new deal is understood to be broadly similar to the 1-year agreement covering the current Premier League season. And finally, for this week's news, Watford have confirmed the appointment of Valérien Ismaël as the club's new head coach. The 47-year-old replaces Chris Wilder, whose short-term contract came to an end following Watford's final championship game of the season. On the appointment, Watford technical director Ben Manga said, "Being able to appoint a new coach so soon in May means we can prepare very well together for next season." And that is this week's news. Welcome back then into this week's big topics of the week. We're going to talk about the Champions League and how that's laid out this week, plus also some Europa League results as well to come in just a moment. Of course, the semi-final stages of the UEFA competitions now, it's all getting quite tight at the end of the season, of course. And we'll start with the big game on Tuesday night then. And Kevin De Bruyne's screamer earned Manchester City a Champions League semi-final first leg draw at Real Madrid to keep their dream of the treble on track. City know any win next Wednesday at home against Madrid will send them to only their second Champions League final against either Internazionale Milano or AC Milan. Pep Guardiola's side dominated the early stages at Nervi Bernabeu, with Thibaut Courtois denying De Bruyne, Rodri and Erling Haaland twice. But Vinicius Jr. scored with Real's only chance of the first half. 25-yard thunderbolt, which flew past Edison, following a brilliant run by Eduardo Camavinga. Just as Real began his dominated period of the second half, City found a way back, with De Bruyne fizzing a shot from a similar distance into the bottom corner. Aurier and Tchouaméni also gave Real looking to extend their record tally to 15 European crowns, the lead again with another strike from range, but it was well saved by Edison. City are now unbeaten in 21 games in all competitions, a run which includes 17 wins, 7 more victories, and they get the treble. And they will win the league, the FA Cup, and the Champions League. A feat that has only been completed by their City rivals, Manchester United, back in 1999. There you go. Well, it was a great game on Tuesday night, to be honest. Massive result. I'd say better result for Manchester City, because obviously it's the away leg, and in the away leg you want to come out with anything out of the game whatsoever. But for the home team in the first leg, a win is a must. And that's why that I would say it was a better result for Man City than it was for Real Madrid. Although, to be fair, neither team can really argue the result, because Man City were the better team in the first half and conceded. Real Madrid were the better team in the second half and conceded. And it was a game of two halves, as traditionally said. It's so cliche, but it's true. And that was how they summed up the game. And the scoreline reflected that in the end. A 1-1 draw going into next Wednesday's second leg. Moving on to the second semi-final, and Inter Milan took a big step towards reaching the Champions League final as they beat their city rivals in a thrilling Milan derby at San Siro, in a game that had been anticipated for weeks in Italy and was witnessed at the ground by a vocal and passionate 80,000 strong crowd. Inter made the perfect start with Edin Dzeko volleyed home in the 8th minute. The goal silenced the Milan fans, the designated home side for this tie in the stadium the two sides share, as they significantly outnumbered for the Inter supporters. And the hosts were stunned further 3 minutes later when Henrik Mkhitaryan, blast from the past there, Henrik Mkhitaryan swept a shot beyond Mike Manya after being set up by Federico Di Marco. Hakan Calhanoglu hit the woodwork as Inter threatened to get a third, but there was hope for AC Milan when referee Jesus Gil Manzano reversed a decision to award the visitors a penalty, deeming Lautaro Martinez to have dived after consulting the pitchside monitor. Inter dropped their tempo in the second half as they looked to protect their 2-goal advantage, and it almost presented AC Milan with a lifeline as Sandro Tonali struck the post with a shot from the edge of the box. But Inter held firm, and they're in a strong position to reach the final, where they will face either Man City or Real Madrid. And when the two sides meet again at San Siro for the second leg on Tuesday evening, surely it will be a huge end to the tie. I'm looking forward to that one too as well. In that one, of course, it's going to be an interesting second leg. Of course, yes, AC Milan 2-0 down from the first leg, but I wouldn't say it's over. I wouldn't say, that's game over and we can say goodbye. But, it's quite close to being over at this point with Inter 2-0 up. And moving to quite another close game in the end. And Federico Gatti scored a 97th minute equaliser to earn Juventus a draw against Sevilla in their first leg of the Europa League semi-final. Gatti headed in from 2 yards after Paul Pogba superbly kept the ball in as Danilo's header was set to drift wide. Cancelled out Youssef En-Nesyri's 26th minute goal with the striker stroking in Lucas Ocampos' cross. Sevilla dominated the game for large periods but were left to rue missed chances by En-Nesyri and Ocampos. Juventus were lacklustre for most of the game, but with Gatti's header only their second effort on target in the game. Sevilla, who of course knocked out Manchester United in the quarterfinals, have won the Europa League a record 6 times, most recently 3 years ago. They had 13 shots, including 5 on target, and arguably should have left Turin with a bigger advantage, with En-Nesyri taking too long to shoot, went through on goal moments after his opener. It was a pretty one-sided affair for quite a long time, although Juve had some spells of possession, but Sevilla just looks so clinical on the counter-attack and so threatening in terms of that counter-attacking press that, honestly, Juve just didn't match them. And although the one positive you could probably say from Juve there is they kept Sevilla in the game for as long as possible at a 1-goal deficit and threw everything at them in the last few minutes, and they got their rewards for that, unjustly or justly whatsoever. But I would say Sevilla still have the advantage going into their home leg. Remember, they drew away at Manchester United in the quarterfinals. It was a different circumstance. They saved that game from 2-0 down, but they were level in that game and completely battered Manchester United in Seville in the second leg, 3-0. So Juve can't count their chickens yet. They've got back into the tie, but it doesn't mean they're favourites to go through. And to talk about our last of the European games, before we talk about the top 4 race, the relegation battle, and maybe a title race chat in there as well. Eduardo Bove's second half goal gave Jose Mourinho's Roma the advantage over Bayer Leverkusen after the first leg of their Europa League semi-final. The 20-year-old passed into the bottom corner after Tammy Abraham's shot was saved to secure his first European goal. Leverkusen's best chance of Florian Wirtz drag wide in the 6th minute. They had a chance to equalise in the 86th minute, but Jeremy Frimpong's effort after a mistake by Rui Patricio was blocked. Penalty appeals for the same incident were waved away by Premier League referee Michael Oliver. However, Roma could have taken the lead before half-time, but for an excellent save to keep out Roger Ibanez's header. If they advanced to the final, Mourinho would hope to maintain an outstanding record. He guided Roma to success in the Europa Conference League last season and has won his previous 5 European finals in charge of Porto, Real Madrid, Manchester United and Roma, of course. And they have a 1-goal lead going to Germany next week. And that wraps up the Euro games. And let's move into the Premier League preview then, and some big games to talk about this weekend. Leeds, Newcastle is one of the big ones that we have to keep an eye on. Everton, Man City, Arsenal, Brighton, Leicester, Liverpool, all the games on LFS this weekend. But the big chat we need to talk about is top 4. As it stands at the minute, Manchester United and Newcastle are still in pole position to be those two teams in the top 4, with both having a game in hand on 5th place Liverpool. However, one slip up and it could be all over, because Liverpool have been on a really good run, a really, really positive run, their best run in a long while. Picking up successive wins, and that's quite rare to come across with Liverpool this season. I think it's 6 wins in a row now, with 8 games unbeaten, and their last defeat coming away at Manchester City earlier in the season. That was their last defeat, the 1st of April at Liverpool, that. And since then, they've put in some big results, drawing with Arsenal, Leeds win, Forest win, West Ham win, Fulham and Tottenham wins, and of course that win against Brighton at the weekend. All quite similarly, their last 5 results coming from a 1-goal scoreline, but in the end, Liverpool will not care. They're picking up points and they're putting on a late charge for top 4. And it kind of gives you memories of the COVID season, the 2020-21 season, where Liverpool were totally out of the top 4, never been in conversation, and then the last 10 games of the season, they made a late dash for it and ended up stealing 3rd place, never mind 4th, but it looks a much more difficult task. And I think this weekend will be crucial because Man United and Newcastle play first. That was different from last weekend. Liverpool played first last weekend, playing Brentford on the Saturday before Newcastle and Manchester United played on the Sunday. But Newcastle and Man United play on the Saturday this time. Liverpool play Monday night. So the pressure will be on Liverpool this time, actually, rather than on the other two teams. Because Newcastle have no pressure. They can just get the win away at Leeds and extend their lead and be in a comfortable position. Newcastle, if they win, they will be 6 points clear of Liverpool on the same number of games. That means they'll have to lose 2 games and have an inferior goal difference to Liverpool, plus Liverpool win their last 3. It looks difficult to see, not impossible, but difficult to see. But Leeds, and of course, I'm sure Sam Allardyce will have something to say about Leeds trying to get something from Newcastle this weekend. They need it in the bottom 3 as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. Manchester United host Wolves in terms of that this weekend. Again, with them, should be, if it's an easy home win, they're back in comfortable position. 66 points with 3 games to go, 4 points clear. They're in a good position. And with favourable fixtures in their last 3, Manchester United, they will believe that they could do it and that they can see themselves over the line. And maybe Liverpool's chase for top 4 just comes a slightly bit too late this time. Because if Liverpool win all of their last 3, that's 71 points. And on average, 70 points is usually the benchmark where you put, say, this is where we want, this is how many points you need to get top 4. Usually it is around 70 points. But maybe not this season. Maybe the stakes are just that slightly bit too high for Liverpool. With Manchester United still able to achieve 75 points and Newcastle still able to achieve 77, which is quite high for a Premier League top 4 race. It's not been that high for quite a long time. There's not been that competition for quite a long time. But it seems like Liverpool, if they don't get 4th, if they keep their winning run intact, they will get 5th as it stands, with Brighton losing to Everton. That means that Brighton, with their 2 games in hand, will be still a point behind Liverpool if they win those 2 games in hand, that is. And Liverpool, if they keep winning and keep doing what they're doing, they will seemingly be the best of the rest this season, with Tottenham in terrible form with 3 defeats in their last 5. Villa dropping some points, 2 successive defeats. Brentford seemingly out of it now, out of any question of possible European football, but still on the cards. Maybe a late dash for them could be possible, but it is on the outskirts of possibility. To the relegation battle then, and it's getting tight at the bottom. Of course, Southampton are the favourites. They might very easily could be relegated this weekend. Of course, Southampton host Fulham at 3 o'clock on Saturday, and they sit 8 points adrift of the bottom of the safety, that is, of Everton, with the same number of games played and the worst goal difference in the Premier League. They lose to Fulham, and it means that Everton Everton just need to avoid defeat themselves, actually. Actually, no. Defeat to Fulham, Southampton will be relegated because Southampton need 3 wins and if they lose to Fulham, obviously they can't get 3 wins. But anything other than a win for Southampton at home to Fulham would see them head back to the Championship. It's much tighter for the other teams, though. There's 4 other teams in the conversation, with Leeds in 19th on 30 points, Leicester on 18th with 30 points, Everton in 17th, just outside the relegation zone, on 32 points, and Forest in 16th on 33 points. Now, Forest and Everton moved out of the bottom 3, those 2, and switched places with Leicester and Leeds this week, in the previous weekend, after wins in their games. Nottingham Forest beat Southampton 4-3, and Everton beat Brighton 5-1, both on Bank Holiday Monday, that is. But both have much tougher tests to come this weekend. Nottingham Forest go to Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, and Everton host Manchester City. So a real tough test for those teams. Leicester have Liverpool at the King Power Stadium, and Leeds have Newcastle. If any team gets anything out of this weekend, it will be seen as a bonus out of those 4 teams, because they're all playing tough opposition. And though, if either Nottingham Forest or Everton get a 3 points this weekend, seems unlikely, but you never know. If they get 3 points this weekend, you would probably put them in a very, very good position. Because if Leicester and Leeds both lose to their teams and Forest win, Forest will be all but safe, because they'll be 6 points clear of the relegation zone with 2 games to go and only 6 points left to play for. Everton, on the other hand, will be a bit tighter, but if they win against Man City and Forest win, it will probably be a done deal that Leicester and Leeds are going down. But then again, it's still a long way to go. But at the minute, I wouldn't want to be any of the teams because they don't have easy fixtures to come. Everton probably have the most favourable of the last couple of fixtures, but even then, where can you see them winning? That's difficult, and it could be over by the time they get to the final day, so that could be irrelevant also. And to move to the title race, we've been talking about this constantly. It's basically Arsenal need to wait for City to slip up. City don't slip up, Arsenal don't win the league. It's as simple as that. And City go to Everton this weekend. Of course, everybody knows Everton in the relegation battle, and Everton at home in previous seasons when they've been in the relegation battle have been a tough test at Goodison Park. But this weekend, I don't know. It's a long shot to say that Man City will drop points to Everton, but stranger things have happened. They've dropped points 8 times this season. Man City, they've lost at home to Brentford, they've lost to Liverpool, they've lost to not many other teams actually in there. But stranger things have happened, and with a relegation team beating top of the table, it's not really. It's happened before on previous occasions. Excuse me. It's happened before. It's possible. In terms of Arsenal, they just need to be there to capitalise. If City do drop points, and for them, Arsenal, City play first. So if City get the win, the pressure's back on Arsenal. Although it could be on City. If City drop points to Everton and Arsenal then have Brighton, Arsenal know the result and know what they need to do to put the pressure on. I think if City draw against Everton, they'll be on 83 points. And if Arsenal win, then they'll be on 84. But Arsenal will still have played one game more than Man City, which Man City's game in hand is against Brighton, Arsenal's opponents, this weekend. So Brighton could be a big play a big part in this title race, and who ends up lifting the trophy on the 28th of May. It could come down to that. So, could be a huge end of the season there. Right, just before we go then, that is the Premier League preview for this weekend, our topic of this weekend. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media pages as well, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok at LF Streams 2. It would be greatly appreciated. Keep up to date with the channel and everything we do on social media on all of those platforms. Right, let me tell you what's coming up this weekend. Don't forget tomorrow, live commentary in the Premier League. Leeds against Newcastle gets us underway. If you want to check any of our streams, just go onto the channel page, onto the dashboard, and you will see all of what's to come. But for this week, thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back next week with another LFS podcast. But for now, have a very good weekend.